Hello there, I'm Emir and welcome to Focus on Africa, our top stories this evening. 1 year on, relatives gather to remember the 157 people killed in the Ethiopian Airlines crash. The pain still raw.
There isn't enough money or enough compensation in this world to compare to the sound of my father's laughter.
It comes as Ethiopian investigators release their interim report into what caused the Boeing 737 MAX to crash just after takeoff. Italy, under lockdown, 60 million people under strict living conditions as the country struggles with the coronavirus outbreak. Also in the programme, one of Nigeria's most influential leaders is now in exile outside Abuja. The deposed Emir of Kano says he accepts his dethronement as the will of God. We report from his palace in Kano.
Sanusi's lawyer says his client might seek redress in court concerning his banishment from Kano State.
And coming up in the sport today, the Kenyan government bans all athletes from travelling abroad for a month as countries around the world continue to feel the bite of the coronavirus outbreak. Hello there, and thank you for joining us this evening on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Well, first this evening, 1 year to the day, relatives of those killed when an Ethiopian Airlines plane crashed shortly after takeoff from Addis have held a private memorial service at the site of the disaster. All 157 people on board were killed when the Boeing 737 MAX plane came down just months after a similar crash involving a similar plane took place in Indonesia. Now, the BBC's Emmanuel Egunza was one of the first journalists at the scene of that tragedy 12 months ago, and he joins me now from Addis. Emmanuel.
Yes, indeed. 12 months ago, I was here with the families as some of them visited the crash site for the very first time, and just seeing their emotions as they began to get to terms with the death of their loved ones. Today, many of them are back here, and they did go back to the crash site to have this private memorial service. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed was among those who sent out their message of strength and prayers to the families of the victims. And also this week, we've seen many of the local community, those who live near the crash site, holding their own special remembrance for those who died. Here is my report of that. A march in honor and remembrance of those who died aboard flight ET-302 a year ago. People living near the crash site have come together to pay tribute. It's an elaborate ceremony fusing traditional and Christian rituals and marks a year-long period of mourning.
Today is a year. These people died on our land and we felt deep sadness. We are here to remember them and to call out their names in blessings.
This is the final stage in mourning those who died. For the families of the victims, we tell them to be strong. Those who have gone cannot come back. But for those who are still alive, we pray and bless you that you may be whole again.
This area remains sealed off to the public, but the memories of that fateful day are still very fresh in the minds of the local community and the families. There are plans to erect a monument here in remembrance of all those who lost their lives, but there are also many unanswered questions about just who bears the responsibility for that tragic accident.
There is nothing worse than...
Among those who died was British national with Kenyan roots, Joseph Waithaka. He had lived with his family in the UK since 2004. His daughter says the last year has been a difficult one. She has criticized the decision to carry out a mass burial at the site without involving families.
I've missed one of my father's most important moments, and he won't walk me down the aisle. So this would have been the only other thing that I would have gotten to have done for him. You know, throughout this process, we've been robbed of so much. When someone dies, you get to pick the suit or the dress that they're buried in. And we weren't part of the process.
Boeing has issued an apology to families, has said it is willing to compensate. What are your sentiments about that?
There isn't enough money or enough compensation in this world to compare to the sound of my father's laughter or to just watching him drink a cup of tea. It's simply not enough.
An interim report released by the government on Monday blamed the accident on design flaws in the plane model and not on the performance of Ethiopian Airlines or its pilots. Back at the site, these two mounds of earth mark the final resting place for the 157 passengers who were on the doomed plane. But their names and memories linger on for those left behind.
So, Emir, I'm really keen to know what sort of reception that report has been received in Ethiopia.
Well, yes, indeed. This is a 138-page report which was just released yesterday, and many of the industry watchers are still going through it to see some of the findings from the investigators, but many of them are not surprised. This just reinforces what we've seen throughout the last 1 year, questions being raised for the plane manufacturer, Boeing, regarding the plane and the system and the way it was certified to go on air. We've also heard from Boeing itself, which says it will be waiting for the recommendations in the final report to make any major statement. But also Zipporah, who we saw there on the report, has emerged as a very fierce critic of Boeing. She's been calling, together with many other families, they've been calling for sort of a proper investigation. They've been saying they are campaigning for aviation safety, that this plane model should not be allowed back in the skies unless the manufacturer Boeing can assure the safety. So in the coming days and weeks, we expect that the industry watchers will be giving their opinion regarding this report.
Emmanuel, thank you very much for that. Well, let's discuss this further. I'm joined now by the aviation analyst, Gitai Mwaniki. Thank you for joining us here on Focus on Africa. So we've had this interim report, very similar findings to the report that was released in April, and yet many questions remain. What happens next in this investigation?
The interim investigation report was just released. And it's a requirement under ICAO guidelines that every year before the release of a final report, an interim report shall be issued. Now the findings, the interim report has indicated findings which are based on facts and evidence as collected from the report, and they've indicated a number of issues that led to the accident. And it has even given recommendations on what are the actions that are required to be taken so that we do not, such an accident does not happen again.
What do you think about what decision should have been taken following that crash in Indonesia? Because many people are saying there should have been a stop at that point. What's your feeling? The first crash, when the first crash happened, there was, at that time, there was not enough information to prove that it was an aircraft design flaw, like we've later come to find out. And at that time, it was initially thought that it was more of a lack of proper transition from the previous model, which was the Boeing 737NG, to the 737 MAX. So at that time, it was still thought, without inadequate facts, that there was a big part of pilot error at that time. Okay. But the second accident confirmed that it was not a pilot issue, it was more of a system design flaw. Okay. And the interim accident investigation report has proven that. And it has even confirmed that a number of issues regarding the aircraft
design were not proper. The angle of attack sensors were not working properly. They were giving erroneous information. The MCA system in the report has confirmed that the MCA system worked based on momentarily on erroneous inputs, and therefore put the aircraft on a nose down position. And it has confirmed that the pilots took the correct action as per the manufacturer's recommendations, but the errors persisted.
Apologies for interrupting you, Gitan. We've just run out of time, but thank you for joining us here on Focus on Africa. Well, we've seen an unprecedented move take place first thing this morning. The whole of Italy was put on lockdown as the government there tries to limit the spread of the coronavirus. All public gatherings have been banned, and everybody is being urged to either work from home or take annual leave until at least early April. So let's have a look at those latest figures. Now, the number of confirmed cases globally is now more than 114,000, with more than 4,000 deaths. In the United States, meanwhile, there are more than 700 confirmed cases. Wall Street, you remember yesterday, suffered its worst day in more than a decade. And today, countries around the world have released billions of dollars to support economies battered by this outbreak. And turning our attention to Africa, well, Burkina Faso has confirmed its first 2 cases of the virus. In the last hour, the DRC has confirmed its first patient, bringing the total number on the continent to 101, with 11 countries affected. But of course, at the moment, concern really is on what is going on in Italy, because outside of China, it has the highest number of cases, and a number of airlines have since cancelled flights to and from the country. 60 million people are currently in lockdown. Well, one of those is the Nigerian-born musician Tommy Kuti, who was brought up in Italy and now lives in Milan. Thank you for speaking to us here on Focus on Africa. I'm just going to remind you about these new figures that we've got here, Tommy. I understand the deaths have really jumped up to 631. Cases have also gone up by nearly 1,000. Are you worried by what's going on in Italy?
Of course, I am quite worried. I have the feeling that we're living in a movie. Like, it seems like it's a type of scene that you will only see on the side of a Hollywood blockbuster, because every shop is closed. People are not allowed to go out. And actually, like, the police are actually going to control you and not allow you to move outside of the city. Like, I'm currently here in Milan, and I'm not sure I can go back to my parents' house and visit them.
What's it like then in this self-isolation? Do you know what to do? Do you know what to do if you get ill? Do you know how to get tested?
I guess they invented a hotline to call, so you don't have to go to the hospital directly. They will actually come to take care of you at your home house. But yeah, I guess, like, on the news and on television, on every social media, everyone, like, in this day, I've been talking about staying home. That's been the hashtag, Io resto a casa. Everyone has to stay home. So that's pretty much most of the direction they gave us, that we have to stay home and only leave the house if we have emergencies and stuff.
Okay, so the government has said, if you can, please work from home. You're a rapper. What's all this doing to your profession?
It's bad, man, because all of my shows have been cancelled for the next 2 or 3 months. And so it's not just me suffering. It's almost every person that is working in the entertainment industry. Like, everything is just shut for like at least 2 months now. So it is crazy.
We've just seen a shot there of some of the military that you mentioned a short time ago. If you do need to leave the house, if you need to travel, what do you have to do? How are you going to do that?
Apparently, they say that if you have like an emergency and you actually want to leave your house, you have to print out a form that certificates the reason why you're leaving your house. And if your reason is not valid, I think you might get fined. That's what's happening.
Goodness. Okay, well, good luck with everything. Tommy Kuti, thank you very much indeed for speaking to us from Milan. Thank you.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
You too. Now, the former Emir of Kano, who on Monday was dethroned as one of the most influential traditional rulers in Nigeria, says that he accepts his removal from office. Muhammadu Sanusi II had been in the position since 2014, but he was involved with something of a political dispute with the governor of Kano State, while the state government replaced him within hours with his predecessor's son. The BBC's Helen Oyubo is outside the Emir's former palace.
Many people say the governor, a member of the ruling All Progressives Congress, was angry at the Emir's support of the opposition People's Democratic Party during the 2019 general elections. He expressed his displeasure in different ways. First, the breaking down of the emirate into 4 more councils in a bid to whittle down the power of the Emir of Kano. And then the institution of a probe against Sanusi on allegation that he had misappropriated funds belonging to the Emirates. Things came to a head on Monday with a statement from the government saying that Sanusi had been dethroned and removed as the Emir of Kano. He was subsequently led away from the palace here, escorted by heavily armed police officers, taken away to Abuja, the nation's capital, where his lawyer says he's presently being kept. Mixed reactions from people here. Though it was expected a protest would happen, that didn't happen, but some prominent Nigerians have expressed displeasure at the way and manner in which Sanusi was dethroned. The new emir is Aminu Ado Bayero, a cousin and in-law to Sanusi, and also the son of the former emir of Kano, Ado Bayero, whom Sanusi took over from in 2014 upon his death. It is unlikely that the dethronement will be reversed, but Sanusi's lawyer says his client might seek redress in court concerning his banishment from Kano State. From the palace of the Emir of Kano, Helen Oyubo, BBC News.
You're watching Focus on Africa, coming to you from BBC World News. Stay with us because still to come in the sport. We're making history in Zambia as the country's women qualify for their first ever Olympics. Hello there, I'm Lakwesa Burak. This is Focus on Africa, your top stories this hour. And 1 year on, relatives of the 157 people killed when Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 crashed 6 minutes after takeoff have been gathering to remember their loved ones. In the last hour, Italian officials have confirmed that the number of people who've died from coronavirus has now risen to 631. That's up from 463 yesterday. The country is under a lockdown. Well, as those cases continue to climb, not only in Italy, but worldwide, there is a real sense of urgency now to find that vaccine. But how close are we? Well, our reporter, Shona McCallum, has been taking a look at progress so far in that battle against coronavirus.
Science is fighting back against the new coronavirus. This lab at Imperial College London is just one of the labs in the world developing a coronavirus vaccine.
Absolute sense of urgency and wanting to deliver and stepping up to this challenge. And so everybody is working as fast as they can. There's also a degree of kind of just innovation to make things happen really, really much quicker than they've done before.
The first doses of the new vaccine, several hundred of them, are kept in this freezer. All must go through animal and human trials before they can be declared safe and effective, and that all takes time. These scientists in the United States are also working in emergency mode.
Mortality rate is.
Scientists here were able to spring into action after China posted details of the virus's genetic code online.
We received the sequence from the Chinese government, and we worked overnight, and the next day we had designed a vaccine. We immediately put that vaccine into manufacture, which is the stage that it's currently in, and we hope that that will be entering into human clinical trials by early summer. That timeline is absolutely unprecedented in vaccine development.
The work here and into other research facilities in the US and Australia is being funded by an organisation called the CEPI. It's a coalition of governments and philanthropic organisations that invest in developing new vaccines for emerging diseases as quickly as possible. The earliest a vaccine will be ready is a year or 18 months. Remarkable progress in just a few years when vaccinations used to take around 20 years to create and produce. Shona McCallum, BBC News.
You're watching Focus on Africa. Time for the sport. And Mimi, coronavirus even impacting the world of sport.
Absolutely. Get right to it. We'll see how it's affecting there on the continent. Now, sporting activities around the world are continuing to be affected by the global coronavirus outbreak. And in the last couple of hours, Kenya has confirmed that all its athletes are barred from traveling abroad for international events. BBC's Lynn Wachira in Nairobi with more on this story.
The whole world is focused on curbing the spread of the coronavirus, and the sports sector continues to take a hit. In Kenya, the sports ministry has banned all sportsmen and women from traveling outside the country to take part in international sports events. Hardest hit will be Kenyan athletes preparing to take part in various spring marathons that have not been cancelled across Europe. Early today, the Football Kenya Federation was forced to write to the Confederation of African Football requesting for the Africa Cup of Nations qualifier match against Comoros' home and away fixture to be postponed.
Comoros team, as we understand it, most of the players are from France, so they have to fly in from CDG to Kenya. But for CAF, there is no other window to play these games because of the World Cup and because of the AFCON coming back to February next year. There is no time.
The ban will also largely affect the National Olympic Committee of Kenya, as they will not be able to send participants to various Olympic qualifier events.
All right, staying with the global coronavirus outbreak, Gambia's coach has called for this month's 2021 Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers with Gabon to be postponed. Several matches are due to take place across Africa in 2 weeks' time. Thomson Fier says that he's not able to access 4 of his best players, all of whom are based in Italy. On Monday, Italy announced that the entire country, which is Europe's worst affected by the virus, are in lockdown. And today came the announcement that matches in the top 2 divisions in Spain and France are to be played behind closed doors for the next 2 weeks because of coronavirus concerns. And as Champions League action kicks off in just over 2 hours' time is the second leg of the last 16. That decision will apply in one of the matches today in Spain, where Valencia host Atalanta. Atalanta have a 4-1 win over the host from the first leg. The other match sees Tottenham Hotspur, who have traveled to face RB Leipzig, with the host having a 1-0 advantage over the visitors. Spurs boss Jose Mourinho will be hoping that they can turn their fortunes around. All right, Zambia's women's football team qualified for the first Olympic Games in their history when beating Cameroon 2-1 in Osaka to make it through on away goals. Zambia are only the 5th African side to reach the Olympics women's football tournament after Cameroon, Nigeria, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. Now, over the weekend, the Senegalese capital, Dakar, saw an all-female car race take place. After a 13-year hiatus, 21 women took turns to race 2 Peugeots at the Senghor Stadium. A curious and enthusiastic crowd who are not used to seeing this went to witness it all. I'm sure you're happy about the Zambia story.
I felt like saying, could you just say that again, Mimi?
I saw your smiles.
No, I mean, that is fantastic news, isn't it, for them? And great news for women's football in general.
Yeah, the growth on the continent.
Okay. Mimi, thank you very much. And don't forget that you can get in touch with Mimi and myself on social media. You'll find me as @Laquessa Burak. Do stay with us, or rather join us tomorrow. Plenty more coming up from the team. Cheerio.